It's common for project managers to work as contractors and get a narrow view of an organization. And many of us have actually been hired as employees to continue with an organization and see that shift in exposure and realize that that vision can be surprising. So we have the great fortune tonight of hearing about that shift in perspective from going from being involved on a project to being directly accountable for the direction of an entire organization as an employee. David Kimmel is the President and Chief Operating Officer at the Georgia Aquarium. Heather McKeen is the VP of Facilities and Operations over the buildings, property, and all capital improvement projects at the Georgia Aquarium. David Kimmel and Heather McKeen both started as program managers brought in with their unique skills to develop, design, and execute the building of the world's largest aquarium. That's a daunting task. So both David and Heather share a background in construction management, and they're both well acquainted with drop-dead deadlines that don't shift. And to give an example of that, I have a story. When building the original aquarium, David and Bernie were walking to the site about the time that we had the columns coming out of the ground and pouring slabs. This is Bernie Marcus, the prime benefactor of the Georgia Aquarium. As Bernie marked upon the progress, David told him, "Well, at least we have a building permit now." Bernie looked at the progress and at David incredulously and said, he hoped someone knew what was going on around here. As they continued to walk, Bernie asked David, "What all can go wrong?" And David replied, "What can't go wrong? But it's my job to handle it." And you know, as project managers, that's what we do every day. Now they both have integral roles in the organization, and they'll share tonight with us their journey in maintaining the success and wow factor experiences that we've come to expect from our visits to the Georgia Aquarium. So please join me in welcoming David Kimmel and Heather McKeen.
All right, well, thank you very much, first of all, for having us. David and I have both spoke here before. David, I think 2 or 3 times, and me at least once. And it is truly one of our favorite groups to speak to, so thank you. We're going to probably jump. Oh, you want to speak?
Yeah, I was going to say, Fred, you're the only other person who can understand that story with Bernie. Fred had to live with Bernie before I got him.
All right, we're going to jump right in. One of the key things about the Georgia Aquarium is our mission. And there's 4 key words of our mission. It's entertaining, engaging, educational, and we inspire. This is the mantra by which we live and by which the aquarium was founded. We opened in 2005, which many of y'all know, and Bernie Marcus is our benefactor.
And just to come back to the date for a second, if everyone remembers, it was 44 months from the day that we first sat down to discuss the development of the aquarium, no designers, no plans, no nothing, until the day that we opened to the public with our exhibits fully stocked with animals. So again, I think you can look back and say, how the heck were you able to accomplish all of that?
Bernie is still involved every day in what we do and how we do it. He is the chairman of our board, and he comes all the time to visit, whether it's the dolphin expansion to see how we're doing on our new show, or to chat with David and probably beat him over the head on what he's doing wrong, or talk to the senior staff. He is very integral in everything we do. As many of y'all know, we are adjacent to major attractions in downtown Atlanta, the Children's Museum, the World of Coca-Cola, CNN Center, the Center for Civil and Human Rights, which is going to be starting underway next year. So we're right down there in the metropolis of it all.
One of the things that Bernie's other goal was, and again, is to remind everybody, was not just to build the world's largest aquarium. In fact, when we started, we had no clue that we were going to be the world's largest aquarium. But what he also had a commitment to the city, and again, going back to Georgia, because this is where Home Depot started, this is how he made his fortune. So the idea is to go downtown and become an economic impulse, an economic driver for downtown. And if you think about it, what was there before the Georgia Aquarium and what's been there since then? Since then, the W Hotel, 12, Ivan Allen Plaza, the whole corridor of the Ivan Allen Boulevard, linking Northside Drive to the east side of Atlanta. So again, it's become the pivotal part, Coca-Cola coming over. Now we're going to see the Center for Civil and Human Rights break ground very shortly, and hopefully, and knock on some wood, that the College Football Hall of Fame will actually get its funding and also start down there. So again, downtown Atlanta has reestablished its place as a hub, all really built around Centennial Olympic Park, which goes back to the to the park organizers, what their vision was.
Many people have been to the aquarium. Actually, who hasn't been to the aquarium?
Come on,
Anybody?
speak up.
Oh my goodness.
Shame.
Please, we invite you. Come to the aquarium.
In fact, I'll make it really simple. Is right here I brought membership applications. So there should be nobody leaving who even lives in this town that does not want to be a member of the aquarium to come and visit. So you just don't have to be a volunteer to come to enjoy. But we would love to have you as a volunteer anyway.
Many of y'all been to the aquarium. You know that we have galleries, Georgia Explorer, Ocean Voyager, but what you may not understand is each of those galleries is a foothold into the conservation and research that we do. And that's probably a little-known story is about how much goes on behind the scenes. In Georgia Explorer, we talk about the lionfish and their invasive species off the coast of Florida. We have our turtle rehabs down in the coast of Georgia. And then we also do the right whales off the coast of Georgia up and down the East Coast. River Scout. In River Scout, we talk about our non-source points pollution, what we put into our streams and our sewers ends up in the oceans and affects all the animals there. Coldwater Quest. This is a big focus for us with our belugas. So belugas are very important. Obviously, they're Billy Marx's personal favorite in the aquarium. And we do a lot of sea otter research and conservation with Monterey Bay in California, and with the belugas in Alaska, and then also with the penguins out of Sand Cobb, which is in South Africa.
And if you go back, and again, if anyone, and you should all actually know what's going on at the aquarium, we have 4 beluga whales. We have Beethoven, we have Maris, we have Grayson, and we have Keynote. And by the way, if anyone doesn't know, a beluga whale is actually gray when they're first born. But if you come, you're going to see Maris. Maris is pregnant. And that's a big deal for us, because having a a beluga whale who is pregnant in captivity, who is not impregnated by artificial means, is a big deal. So we come see what a beluga looks like pregnant, know that Beethoven is the father. Beethoven is our other beluga whale there. And let's just say that staff had to work with Beethoven to educate him on how one impregnates another. I tell it better when it's private, when it's a smaller group, by the way.
Ocean Voyager. We do research with our whale sharks in Mexico and our manta rays off the coast of Florida. Tropical Diver. We work a lot with the Coral Restoration Federation and actually rebuilding coral reefs. Our tropical diver staff is down in the Florida Keys all the time working with this federation.
In fact, some of this work started years ago with one of our original staff members, Dr. Bruce Carlson, looking at the coral reefs off the Solomon Islands and seeing how they were destroyed and how long it took for them to come back.
And of course, the most beautiful gallery of them all, and I'm partial.
You would be.
Because I was the senior project manager over it. So, is AT&T Dolphin Tales, which opened April 2nd last year. And it is a theater and a guest space where you can have special events. And it's about 1,800 people seat in the theater. And it's a Broadway-type dolphin show with the Dolphins and the Stars.
So, okay. Who has not seen our Dolphin Tales show yet? Oh, come on, folks. That means that you have not been to the aquarium in a year. Shame. Now, if the next slide actually works.
Yes, it works.
This is a test, but we're going to give you a little glimpse of it, because what we have, is not a show, not a dolphin show. We have a show with dolphins. This is a Broadway production that with music that was originally done by the Los Angeles Symphony. So let's see if it comes.
It's Broadway theater with dolphin stars, singers, original music, amazing choreography, and soaring action. Be part of something magical. Only at the world's largest, most magical aquarium, Georgia Aquarium, where imaginations go to play. Reserve your tickets online today.
That's a new commercial coming out, but it gives you a little glimpse as to what this show is. It is not what you see down in Florida or anywhere else.
The dolphin expansion is the $110 million project. The project, while we got started on it, also encompassed 3 other projects. It was the renovation to the cold water gallery, it was a quarantine facility, and a holding facility. So it was essentially an umbrella for a lot of other projects below it, all occurring at the same time with the same staff and the same contractors.
One of the interesting things also that was different from when we opened is the fact that when you're not open, it's simple. There's nobody to bother, there's nobody to get in your way, and you could just do basically, you could attend to the schedule. If you're behind schedule, you can add more staff, you could add more shifts. There's a lot of things you can do to mitigate the situation. What the difficulty that Heather had with doing the dolphin expansion is that now, 1 point of access. 2, this is an operating facility. And therefore, the entire construction schedule now had to be altered, adjusted, built within the operational guidelines of the aquarium, which was the main thing. You had a tower crane having to go up one time that actually had to be delayed because we had a major event going on that weekend and we couldn't block our access to our parking deck. So there's major things. And I'll give you something as simple as noise. Noise is a problem in an aquarium. We have mammals in there that have hearing at various levels. So we had to actually do major studies to understand what the sound levels were going to be generated by construction noise, and also do the study as to what the hearing patterns were of the various animals that we had. So think about it. Doing a building is complex. Adding in the operating concerns is another complexity, even something as simple as blasting rock. And I'll just give you the thing, what had to be coordinated was that the belugas had to get their heads out of the water at the time of the blast. Because not only from the noise, but the vibrations that are coming through the entire building. So it had to be totally synchronized. So it was up, hit the plunger, blast, they came down. So all of this then had to be scheduled, had to be coordinated with other activities. So add that to your scheduling complexities.
I think the difficulty, too, was that when we built the original aquarium, we didn't plan on taking it apart 5 years later. So 5 feet of concrete wasn't meant to come out 5 years later. So trying to demo out that concrete with animals, sensitive animals, within about 30 feet was very difficult. We had to alter our demolition patterns and also our demolition equipment and we were at the point where we were 30 minutes on, 30 minutes off of demolition. And as anybody knows, that's very inefficient for demolition. So none of that was actually taken into consideration. We couldn't plan for it when we first did the schedule, so we had to make up that schedule time within the project.
Again, you talked about your volunteers. Georgia Aquarium is a major business in itself. I mean, if you think about it in that way, we have over 600 employees that are just employees of the aquarium. That doesn't include our partners at the aquarium, Wolfgang Puck Catering, our cafe, our gift shop, our parking deck, our AV team, our photography team. So when you add all of this up, there's probably another 200 partners that are there with employees. So all combined, we're probably well over 800 employees that are working day in and day out in downtown Atlanta. You couple that with the fact that we have probably a little over 2,000 volunteers that are on our roster. I'll give you an example. Last year, our volunteers gave us the equivalent of 100 full-time equivalent employees. Now that's a lot, and our volunteers just don't make phone calls, they just don't pass out brochures when you first come into the aquarium. Some of those, and I think Alexander can attest, are there working in our exhibits. They're cleaning out fish tanks. They're feeding fish. They're diving and cleaning our exhibits. So it's really funny. We see people that come to the aquarium and they, with diaper cloths, wiping our glass down, and yet they'll never do it at home. So it's kind of interesting. But this just shows you it really takes a major group of folks to run the aquarium, and we're going to talk about that in a few minutes.
We're going to step back and talk about our management philosophy. This philosophy was the same one we used when we did the original aquarium, carried over to dolphin expansion, and any other project we've done at the aquarium. And we've talked about it, but we want to review it real quickly with you. First of all is the plan. And the key part of the plan is the vision. And when we clarified the vision on the original aquarium, it was a book of about 4 inches thick. And that same vision and plan carried over to dolphin expansion. And it's one of the key principles that we try and live by. We also consider all project entities from the largest to the smallest. This means anybody who can have an impact upon your project, from the vendors all the way up. It's important to understand everybody's challenges and everybody's goals and make sure that everybody's on the same page. Scope the competition. We do this today. I was in California not long ago scoping our competition.
We're not ashamed.
No, we're not. No. But you do. You have to benchmark yourselves. So you have to benchmark yourselves against the people who are doing it right and the people who are doing it wrong. And don't forget the user groups. This is a good lesson we're going to talk about later, is that the people who are day in, day out at your facility or utilizing your software or whatever the project is encompassing are the key people who are important to keep it live and keep it going. Assembling the team. This was a key principle for us also because our team was so important. The original team, there's only probably the one architect that had worked on an aquarium before. Nobody else had. And so when we brought Dolphin, we brought back those key players and those key teams. So that's what made Dolphin also run so smoothly, is that experience helped us just to propel really quickly forward the schedule.
By the way, you'll also get around the unknown conditions because they put it in. And they designed it so unknown conditions went away.
Understand your challenges. This is understanding your environment, what's around you, and what impact does that have overall. And our issue management. This is a key one, even as we work day to day with our senior staff. It's having the face-to-face meetings and requiring those decision makers at that meeting, or else nothing can go forward. And it's don't delay the decisions. Make the decision and move forward. If it's a wrong decision, you can go back and you can fix it, but just delaying it, it makes it worse. And your communication plan. How are you disseminating the information, getting the questions out, and getting the answers back? And you use this with your management tools for your tracking, your accounting, and your project management.
You know, and it's easy to get lazy. It is easy, so easy to get lazy doing the basics. I'm guilty of it. I think we're all guilty of it at some point in time. And when we get lazy is when we get in trouble. And I mean where you get off message, you get off track, and there's a breakdown on every one of these issues that were listed.
So our report card. This is what's interesting. It's we've been operating for 6.5 years. And so David and I sat back and we said, okay, let's do a report card on ourselves. How did we do building the original aquarium? And we're very critical, I think more so on ourselves now looking back than probably other people would be on the outside looking in.
Just even to back up on that is, on the vision of this report card, when we sat down to start this aquarium, neither one of us had any vision, any thought that we would move from the consultant side to the operating side. So that was one. We opened the aquarium in 2005, and for the most part, we went away. We had involvement in different aspects, but we were gone until about 2007 when Dolphin was brought up and we started working on that. I came over to the aquarium side of life in May of 2010. You came at the end of 2010. So it's that kind of perspective that we're giving you. It's now live with what you did when you never thought you were going to have to. And the report card did say we screwed up one thing.
Yes.
And that is We have no windows in our
No
administrative
windows.
offices. So I would have a
It
window.
didn't matter when we didn't work there day to day, but now that you
Who
work there
cares?
day to day, you live in a concrete box. So.
And I'd have a bathroom.
Yeah. All right. Here's some of our lessons learned. We're going to walk through them. Our operational costs. We did not put enough long-term look at what the operational costs would be. We were there to build it and get out.
And this is so important. And even after you build it and you get it out, the first group comes in and is just worried about survival through the beginning years, getting it up and getting it running. And the long term that now we're established, now we're an entity, starts to come into play. So one of the things that we started this year was, how much does it really cost to operate the aquarium on a very long-term basis? And now, and if you go back, everything's brand new day one. And we had a lot of donations also of various equipments day one. So now all of a sudden, and someone was asking us before, how often does the carpet go out? Well, you know what? You didn't think about it a couple of years ago. You're worried about filling up the ballroom with people. In fact, I remember that a previous administrator said to me one time, who could care about the carpet? I have so many people in here, whoever looks down to see it. And it's true. Those are the things that got overlooked. How often do you replace salt in the water? How often does a piece of equipment go? And here's the other key thing. You can't go to the normal metrics to find this stuff out, because we are not running a normal facility. We're running something that was unique design, or the traffic patterns are much different, probably closer to the airport. But the first year we had 3.7 million people come through the door. Since opening, we've had over 15.7 million people come through the door. How do you gauge that? How do you gauge the load on the animals and the fact that we have animals in there that we never contemplated at the beginning? Think about life support systems, the whole water treatment facilities that are based on that load requirement, different dietary measures. We didn't know what a whale shark ate when we first brought them in. So how can you even figure out what the load is on your system except that you guessed? Now we're finding out what we guessed right, what we guessed wrong. And all of these things in the operational costs are now starting to come up. What's it going to cost us 5 years from now to run this place? And as project managers, we don't really care. And I don't care who, I know you say, oh, no, I care. No, you don't. Because I said the same words. And until you live on the other side, you don't care, or you care but you really don't know. So think about that on your next project.
Flexibility. We found that we had a fairly rigid point of view. We were going off what our drawings are. We weren't looking at how it was truly going to be operated or used by the visitors. Point in case on this is our plaza and our ticketing. We know we have a challenge with our plaza and our ticketing, that we have lines and we have security issues on where security tables sit, check your packages. And so it's a hard thing for us to come back and look at it and say, how are we going to fix this? Because it's always much more expensive now. Much more expensive to go back and fix it. But we did one thing right. We put a roof over your head at ticketing so you don't get wet while you're standing in line. But so we have challenges on how flexible we are in our space. Our flow. We have difficulties with flow in strollers. Strollers are bad at the aquarium for us. They impede all the flow, and it wasn't really thought about when we were designing the spaces in the hallways. You were thinking about people walking normally without a lot of other stuff with them. And strollers can be given very large. I can say that I'm a stroller mom too. I'm the example we always use in-house. So, it's something that we just didn't think about in our flow.
I think also is, while we put the mandatory or the obligatory elevators in there and some ramps, I don't think we clearly considered our visitors who are disabled, our wheelchair visitors, some of the other handicap-type visitors. So again, yes, it meets all the requirements you can get around, but is it the easiest to get around? Stairs versus escalators, because we value engineered them out. Was that the right thing in the long run? You can answer that.
I think on the elevators, too, we make them more visible. I think a lot of that was going off of design on keeping those things kind of tucked around and out of the way. The focus with the galleries, the fish. But now people have a hard time finding the elevators. So we have to put staff or put signage to say where the elevators are. So The office space. David and I mentioned earlier, talking to someone, that when I came on board, one of the first things I did was essentially a restacking. Is I moved people around back to where they should have been operating when we first designed the building. And office space is a challenge for us. One, because we didn't think of it as the business side. We thought about, yeah, there'll be people there and they'll be working, they'll be feeding the fish and clean the floors and doing all that. But there's a whole other business side that we didn't take in consideration. So our office space is much smaller and is a challenge to us.
Right. And also from those early days, we have a very large communications department, especially now dealing with social media, which I still don't understand, but they tell me it's important. But these are little things, the amount of switchgear that we have to have, some of the other things that were not there. And here's another important part, because you mentioned nonprofit. We do not look at ourselves as a nonprofit organization. We look at ourselves as a not-for-profit organization, and there's a major philosophical difference between the two. In my opinion, many nonprofits, if you go into some of the museums or whatever, they do a lot of different programs in there, and they need the fundraising in order to survive. That is not our case. We run it as a business. We are self-sufficient. We do not take money from the city. We don't take any money from the state. And we don't take money from the federal government. Everything that we do comes off of our gate admission.
And no money from Bernie.
And absolutely no money from Bernie.
No money from Bernie.
Bernie wrote his check, and thank God it cashed. Well, there was no return stamp. But that was it. But that was the gift. The continuing gift is his wisdom and his guidance. So it is important to understand that we are a not-for-profit, not a nonprofit. And that comes into the office space, that comes into all of the operational concerns as well.
The employees. I think one of the key things that we're realizing now, even sitting on this side, is that we didn't think about how the employees were going to use the space, how they're going to come into the aquarium, how they're going to leave the aquarium, the security checks that employees go through. We're looking at renovating now just to have an alternate place for the employees to come in. That's something that's more friendly, feels like more upbeat as opposed to a side door off a street. So that's one of the things we're looking at and taking consideration. Our technology, we sit here now 5 years later, or 6.5 years later, but the equipment, technology equipment we spec'd was actually more like 8-9 years ago. So our technology is having to be switched over now. Everything from our cabling to our lighting to our controllers, you name it, across the board is having to be switched out. So we wish we had a little bit more flexibility and forethought in how we put together that technology, knowing the changes that come down the line. And then general amenities. I think one of these biggest ones is storage. We have a huge lack of storage in the aquarium. Very little closet space. So we have to manage everything kind of almost on a just-in-time basis coming into our dock, and we don't have a lot of place to house things.
Which also comes back to the operational cost, that sometimes you can't take advantage of great pricing when you're doing that, especially our fish food.
Yes.
Fish food is expensive, and it is all restaurant grade sushi. So thank you for the chicken tonight, because you left more for us.
All right, looking back. We're going to say, what did we do well? We actually, fearing all the things we did bad and how critical we are to ourselves.
Being the critical side, we do highlight the negative sometimes.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, there's 99.9% of good stuff that's there. We just highlighted some of the bad, but on the good stuff.
I'll be honest with you, that's probably, when David and I sat down and did this presentation, was the first time we actually sat there and thought about, what did we do right? We get blamed for everything, by the way, at the aquarium that's wrong. But, what did we not really do right?
Maybe you do.
I do. The facilities, I get blamed, yes. So, Ocean's Ballroom. We did this right. We made another revenue source for us to come in. It's customizable, over 16,000 square feet. They added onto it in 2006 with another pre-function space, and it's a great place.
Do you know that we're the #1 wedding venue in Atlanta?
Mm-hmm. Behind the scenes.
This is, it's interesting. You all have been there at one point, except for you. But that's okay, because you're going to fix that next week. You only see about 1/3 of all the square footage, and you see the pretty side. But what we're going to show you a little bit is, to me, as an engineer, what's really unique about the aquarium, or what it takes actually is the behind the scenes. This is where a lot more of the planning went into effect.
Absolutely. Our commissary, David mentioned this earlier about how much fish food goes through. It's about 572,000 pounds a year for all of our animals. All animal food goes into this commissary, and then it's distributed out to the various galleries.
And do you know that we have a full-time nutritionist that just sets up the diet for our animals, and each is weighed? It's fat, it is all segregated out by animal, what they're going to eat, calorie intake, and sometimes it fluctuates based on their health needs.
Our surgical suite and our treatment rooms. These are about 10,000 square feet of surgical space. It's in coordination with the Correll Center. And these treatment rooms we coordinated with UGA in designing them.
And these surgical suites, I will take you into any hospital, I will bring you into the aquarium, and you'll see no difference. The standards there are surgical grade to the prep room, to the pre-op area, to the surgeon's scrub room that's there. And we do surgeries here. Don't think that we don't, and they're real surgeries. Electric eel, of all the animals, I picked this, and if you see the circle there is a tumor that's on it. By the way, I was talking to somebody about this, and they thought what was really amazing is that we even knew there was a tumor on the eel to even search it out. But there's a tumor on the eel. Now, they are electric eels. They do have an electric charge that's in there. So you stick your hand in the water, go touch them, and tell me if you're going to get a shock or not, let alone doing a surgery on it. So what the staff had to do is come up with basically an induction kind of thing where the eel can be laid on there, that little raised platform, and then we're pouring water over its gills. We're putting a negative charge in there, so basically we're neutralizing it, and then we're doing the surgery. By the way, the eel is healthy and it's back on exhibit. But it just shows you something like that. We do cataract surgeries. We're taking more blood than we know what to do with, which is why it's not just our water quality lab that's taking all of the water sampling, but we're doing our own chemistry lab there. We're testing our own blood. I went to the doctor last week for my annual checkup, and I first today got the results back from my blood work. My animals get it back the next, a couple hours later. So, I won't go into the political side of this one, by the way, but we do provide real health care. And then even having our own in-house pharmacy that we're able to disperse out our own drugs. So again, a lot more than meets the eye, and you will not find this in probably 99% of the other aquariums in this country or probably in the world.
Our life support systems. If anybody has been on the back of house tour, I would highly recommend it. You see it a lot of these places, and one of the most impressive is this room right here. This is the Ocean Voyager pump room. And it is huge, and it's loud, but it is the own dedicated pump room for just the 6.1 million gallons in Ocean Voyager. And every exhibit has their own LSS support system, individual from anyone else's. Quarantine and holding. This is actually a project that we just finished up not too long ago, about the end of Dolphin. It kind of came in. And it was currently being housed outside of the aquarium grounds in a warehouse, and that warehouse was meant to last for about a year when we were bringing all the fish in and stocking all the aquarium up. That warehouse stayed, as Fred knows, that warehouse stayed for about 7 years, way beyond its lifespan. So we put quarantine into here, and it's actually been a really great fit for us, and it actually brings our staff back home. And that was a disjointed part of us, is that part of our staff was 13 miles away.
So if you think about it, it's not going to the fish store, it's not bringing home the little bag and sitting it on top of the water and waiting your half hour, an hour, and opening it up. Our animals come in at various times during the year. Many of them are seasonal, so we can only get them at certain times. Animals have to be quarantined for their first 45 days to make sure that they're not being a parasites or any other diseases into our exhibit. Think about bringing a diseased animal into Ocean Voyager and it wipes this place out. We would be dead in the water. We'd have zero inventory left. So that's part of it. But it also gives us some stocking. It gives us the opportunity to turn over some of our exhibits as well. And again, going back to the hospital, you get an animal that's sick, they have to go into ICU, CCU, a regular hospital bed. That's what the quarantine and some of this holding is actually used for.
We also use the holding for animals like the cold stun turtles that happened off the coast in North Carolina, Virginia, and Georgia last year. As some of these turtles came back to our facility to be rehabbed before they went back out. And there's our sea dragons.
How many do we have now?
88 babies.
So again, part of what we're doing here is, again, going into more of a business mind, is we are trying to cultivate our own animals. Having these babies here, we're doing our own jellies, so we don't have to go out and always buy jellies that are only seasonal as well. So again, all of this comes back to a multitude of things. Gives us more flexibility. Yes, it is cost saving, but it also gives us a better array of animals that we can have because we're not dependent on others all the time.
All right, what will we do differently next time? This is a little bit different. Peer reviews. I think we relied way too much on our consultants. And some of those consultants didn't have the aquarium knowledge that we really needed. We should have reached out to our sister facilities and had more of their input into what we did. And really looking at as former operators are the best consultants we could have had. The guest area analysis, we touched on this with strollers and elevators and really understanding how our guests would move through our space. When the aquarium was originally designed, we did have to take out and VE some stuff. So what happened was that we weren't afforded the luxury of going back and really getting an in-depth analysis of what that meant to our flow. So therefore, we did crimp our flow in some of our areas.
But I also come back to, and it comes back to really the first comment on the peer review. We did go to Georgia Tech. We had them come over and do modeling for us, especially for our dolphin exhibit, the strollers for flow and everything else, and they spent months doing studies and great computer models with all these dots that kind of moved around. And guess what? They didn't come close. Human behavior is different than any modeling is, so you still have to bring in the experience of the peer reviews to understand how this stuff works. It was a great exercise, though. Even the fire exiting plan is great with the modeling. But modeling only goes so far. If you don't bring in the experience, it doesn't work. And this transcends to everything. And I think sometimes we're afraid to bring in our peers to see what we're doing because maybe it's a secret, it's a surprise, we want to unveil it. Maybe it's that I'm not as smart as I thought I was. But the fact is, I think we're smarter when we bring our peers in to take a look at us because the analytical reviews only go so far, and people are different.
Final thing we have here is our alternative programs. This is really where we've come in probably the past couple of years is when we built the aquarium, we looked at it as the galleries. You're going to go into the galleries, you're going to visit, and you'll leave. But there are so many other programs that have been developed, and as we develop them, we run out of space. And so we're repurposing space that used to be a lunchroom into our changing gallery and different programs and incorporating new dive programs in lockers that weren't meant for guests. So you've got to go back and we've got to change all this. So I think we would look at the possible other alternative programs we could do that keeps us sustainable. Phase 2. So we did phase 1. Phase 1 was basically completing the building and opening it and guests come on in.
And again, everything isn't bad. We've highlighted some things, but again, the aquarium has done things that nobody else has ever done before. We have guests that come in and do programs that were never thought of before. So even with the fact that we didn't plan for things, we were still able to accommodate them. Whether the greatest way to accommodate it, maybe not, but they got accommodated. And you're going to see some of that as we go forward.
And I think really now where we're focusing is operations, our visitors, and back to our mission. As we were so focused on just being open and getting the guests in and having them have a great time, is we did lose sight of some of that stuff. We were focused on the fun, and now we're kind of gravitating back towards we've got to support the business because we've got to stay here.
So one of the things that we did new this year is that we went to what's called the total ticket price. Previously, the aquarium, we had our general admission. You paid extra for the 4D theater. You paid extra for dolphin tails. You paid even extra for our changing gallery, especially when we had Titanic. This year, we consolidated it all together because the economy is hurting, and so we try to make this a little bit more of inclusive. So for $34.95 on peak days, $29.95 on non-peak days, you get everything. So you come into the aquarium, you see all of our galleries, you see our dolphins show, which again, as you saw from the clip, is totally different. You'll see our 4D theater. And there's a lot of people, by the way, that never even saw the Depot movie that we have, which is an original movie. and it's it's still fun to go watch. And our traveling exhibit, we've now made a commitment to always have a traveling exhibit that's there, and that's frogs. Frogs opened up at the beginning of the year, and it is a cool exhibit, even though I really don't like frogs, but others do, and I'm open-minded on these things now. But it's a great exhibit, and what proved the success, and our chairman said to me, well, how do you know if it's successful or not? And I said, well, there seems to be a line waiting for people to get in there. And he goes, well, I guess that's then the form of success in here. So again, it's really a cool exhibit. Fernbeck had it maybe 5-6 years ago. It's a traveling exhibit. But I think it's fun, and there's other themed things throughout the aquarium that bring you back to frogs.
Here's talking about some of our programs and our special events and how we can do these more one-on-one things that help you reach and get people engaged and keep you coming back. So some of this is done through our learning loop, and this is where we have about 110,000 students go through our educational programs every year at the aquarium. And this is a special loop designed kind of above the gallery floors, and they get to see a lot of behind the scenes. So they get to see, you know, where the sea dragons are being cultured, and they get to see the dump buckets at the top of Tropical Diver on how the waves are made over the exhibit. And then it's all based back to Georgia standards, and they have tests on it. So it is very educational based. It's not just all fun.
Actually, our educational department is run by a gentleman, Dr. Brian Davis, who has his PhD in education. So it's a very serious commitment to educating youth.
Our lecture series started doing Science on Tap, Breakfast Biologists, and Motions with the Ocean. And also we do sleepovers, which they sleep in front of the beluga windows, the Ocean Voyager window with the whale sharks, and we've started doing dolphin and also Tropical Diver.
And it's interesting is that not this past Valentine's Day, but the Valentine's Day before, we did one of these lecture series about the mating characteristics of a lot of the animals in there. And then it was followed by a sleepover. And I'm not saying what, but to see the couple that's in on the upper right-hand corner, well, they just had their baby last month. Yeah. So y'all figure out what happened from there. But they were the ones giving the lecture.
But all these things do help to keep us sustainable and keep us fresh and keep people wanting to come back and see us in a different light. Same with for little kids on parties. You have birthday parties, and we also have Camp H2O, which is in spring, summer, and fall. Kids can come for the week on their break, and they can come to see a lot of the educational stuff behind the scenes and kind of be that zoo ops person for the day.
One of the things also, again, is, Heather mentioned it earlier, but if you haven't done the behind-the-scenes tour, actually you're missing something. To get on top of the Ocean Voyager exhibit, that's the size of a football field. It is the world's largest exhibit at 6.3 million gallons. Nobody's ever done anything like that before. But in that exhibit, we do two programs. We have a swim program where basically it's snorkeling with a little buddy pack, and we also have a dive program for certified divers. It is, if you ever want to get face-to-face with a manta ray, if you ever want to get face-to-face with a a whale shark, if you ever want to look at a grouper and run like hell because he's going to take a wad out of your backside, this is what you want to go and do. And by the way, it makes a great, it's kind of fun. I do it about once a month. By the way, it's a great gift if you're ever thinking about what do you get to somebody. I did it with my daughter, and it's a great experience to do. But part of this is to get closer with it. Beluga and Friends Interaction Program is another program that we started last year to get in the water, wetsuit about waist high, and get face-to-face with a beluga whale, having the beluga come over to you and really learning about this magnificent animal. And while you come out of Ocean Voyager kind of thrilled and excited, coming out of beluga is really an awesome, humbling experience to see what makes this animal tick, to really understand it. And they are just beautiful animals. And really the whole purpose, again, is to come in, make you care, make you think about the animals, because we actually do believe in our conservation and our research message. And this is where we start. This is how we get people like you involved.
Great lead-in. For research and conversation. We are a baby in this industry. Obviously, Monterey and Shed and so many other aquariums have been around for so much longer. But, you know, we've talked about how for the first 6 years, we're establishing the business. We're making sure that we're viable. And what we're coming back down to do, we're getting back into our research and our conversation. Not that we never did it, but we never really told anybody about it. Each of our galleries, I explained, is our foothold into our research and conservation that we do. So this is our focus now in how we're going to educate you and bring you back and teach you about all the things that we're doing.
And part of that is the beginning of this year was a reorganization of our own organizational structure, where again, one of the missions of a new department is to let people understand what the research is that we're doing. And it is extremely fascinating on there, from our whale shark research to the manta ray tagging that we do. And a lot of that comes into, is our 4R program, again, really doing the rehabilitation, the responsibility, the rescue, and the research work, where we really get people involved with the turtle rescues that we do in there as well. And down in the Indian River, where we do dolphin health assessments, where we're finding now that dolphins have cancer. You know, and you think about it and you do all these exams, how does a dolphin get cancer? Because it is in the waters that we drop everything down in. You know, how many people take their prescription drugs that they don't use, pour it in the toilet, flush it, and it goes out into the waters in the stream. The fish eat it. Well, the dolphins are eating the fish, and so are we. So again, we're learning something about it. We're learning about different resistances that these animals have to some of the diseases, that hopefully we can cultivate that into something that that man can really benefit from.
And we do a lot of our research work with over 14 different organizations around the United States. So it's not just us working on our own. This takes a lot of people and a lot of dedication from a lot of the staff.
And what we're trying to do is this year last September, we started something new. And that is, we teamed up with a gentleman by the name of Jeff Corwin and a company called Litton Entertainment. And during the 3 hours of Saturday morning, which is an FCC-mandated kids programming, we developed a program called Ocean's Mysteries with Jeff Corwin, presented by the Georgia Aquarium. Jeff starts every episode from the aquarium. He ends it at the aquarium. And you'll find a lot of our research people go out with him and we show you how we take blood from a whale shark and the research that we're doing, how we're tagging manta rays off the coast of Marineland, Florida, and why it's important and what we're trying to learn from it, about sea otters that are being rescued, about turtles that are being rescued and rehabilitated, to coral reefs that are being wiped out. And again, going back to Heather's comment, each one of these is a focus of our gallery. So Jeff is there. Jeff is really the Jack Hanna. Jack's on land, Jeff's in sea.
And this really broadens our reach from just being kind of the southeast to really a national level. And tell people, we bring in other sister aquariums. We go to Monterey and talk about sea otters. So it's not just about us, but it's about our aquarium industry in general.
Right, and I think it's on at 10:30 Saturday mornings on Channel 2 here locally.
The next chapter of the Georgia Aquarium is the Dolphin Conservation Field Station and the Marineland attraction in Marineland, Florida. And this was actually purchased by the Georgia Aquarium in January of last year.
So again, there was, as we're doing all of this, now we're going through a major acquisition of not only on expanding our research side, but expanding our footprint and expanding our staff. Our mission stayed the same, but it just got expanded. So how do you deal with the development of that and their infrastructure and their needs? And it becomes very complicated on it. But again, it's a commitment that we did because it furthers our conservation and our research arm that we have. And this is a picture of the Marineland facility. Now, what's interestingly enough, is Marineland was first developed in 1938. And not that anybody here would even remember some of that, but in 1955, John Cameron Swayze, Timex, Fred, you've got to remember this. Work with me here, Fred. Thank you. Yeah, but you were here. But it was, the Timex watch, it could take a licking, but still, keeps on ticking. Well, there's a scene in 1955 of a dolphin swimming with the watch through the water, coming back, and it's still working. Well, that was Nellie at Marineland. Nellie was born in Marineland in 60 off plus 1, 1953. Yeah, 1953. Nellie is still with us today. February 27th, she celebrated her 59th birthday. Always at Marineland, and she is the oldest dolphin that we're aware of, let alone captivity or what have you. But Marineland is a nice, intimate facility. We invite people to come down to it. And right across the street is our conservation field station. So again, going back to the business aspect of why this became important in the long-range operational costs is because we can go out and do a lot of our collections here. 3 of our manta rays came off the coast of Marineland. And as you sit in the office there, you can actually watch them swim out there. And we have a plane that goes there. And if you would have watched Ocean's Mysteries, you would have seen all of this.
So where are we going right now?
Where are we going?
Where are we going right now?
You're the facilities person.
I know. It is all about facilities. Unfortunately, a lot of the burden's on me. It's about long-range planning and looking at when we're going to change things out, our lifespans, our maintenance costs. All that's really coming into play now and rolls all the way up to the board for them to understand what's our direction, because unless we understand what our operating costs are right now, we can't plan for our future exhibits because we don't know what kind of money we'll have to sustain ourselves. And these same philosophies that we told you about before, and we used on the original aquarium and on Dolphin, are extremely applicable to the strategic planning that we're doing right now. It's having a clear opportunity, a grasp of your opportunities and challenges. It's understanding what your strengths are and your limitations, where you challenges, and including everybody. This is inclusive approach is now all the way down to the very lowest staff and our volunteers and asking their opinions on what can we do better. You're out there. Alexander's out there, and he's working in the crowds. Well, how are what you see, how can we reflect that in what we're doing long term?
How does the staff of our EO department, the janitorial staff, contribute to this? Ease of cleaning. How can we go faster? I was just reading in the paper yesterday, I think it was, how UPS now has the keyless starters on their UPS trucks and open up the back of the trucks because they could save like a couple of seconds here and a couple of seconds there. You take that off the fuel cost, it was a $70 million savings across the board. If we can get an EO person to recommend something that's going to save us time in cleaning, then we've just made a great choice. So again, it's everybody's involvement.
And key here is the senior leadership, is making sure senior leadership is all on board, all has the same vision, the same mission, and that we're working towards the same goal. And learning from best practices, I've mentioned this before, is scoping our competition. And that's not in a mean way at all, because we are very friendly with our competition and our sister facilities, and we do rely on them. And I call the vice president and shed, and we talk about what we're having on gate issues and maintenance issues, because that's the way we're going to learn from each other. Because there's just, as David said, you can't just go and talk to someone, in the office building next to you and say, hey, what are you doing, and how does this affect you? Because it's just not apples to apples.
And I think also, again, we know that we have to change to make sure that you all come back time and time again. For those people, they don't know the difference because when they come, it's brand new. But again, the commitment to change. And I think the last part of this is as fast as we want to do things and as fast as we try to do things, there's a little bit more patience in trying to work within the realities of an operating facility, working within parameters of animals. So as fast as you want to go, there is some patience that goes with everything, which I have very little of.
Reminding David things take a lot longer now is probably my key. So, really to end it all is we never thought we would be probably on this side of the table when we first started. I know we didn't. But the 2 key things that we take away are our vision and what we're going for, what's our goal, and also that we plan, we execute, we evaluate, and we repeat. And that's key from our program management. And so we do remind people a lot in the aquarium on how to execute that in their day-to-day departments too.
So we hope that you got a little perspective as to, while it's easy to plan, it's harder to operate. But it has been a joy, and it's something that is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity for a lot of us. But with that, we'll take any questions that you may have. Here, I'll give you this one.
All right, we have a question over here.
Yes, Fred. Be kind.
I'll be very kind. One of the most fascinating parts of the aquarium is the pumping and piping systems, because you're pumping salt water. And some of the things I know that you did have never been done before, and you weren't really sure that it was going to work until you turned the pumps on. How is the piping and the pumps and the impellers and the parts that are exposed to salt water, how are they holding up?
believe it or not, they're holding up a lot better than we thought. And even on this, you go normally to a manufacturer's listing, it says how long should the pump last? But it's not right because we're using the equipment in a different way. Every piece of pipe in there is plastic, so it's working. We've had some problems with our foam fractionators. They have broken down. We've had to do some unique repairs to them. So the system's great. Some of the parts and pieces have a little bit more wear and tear on them than we thought. But we're learning it. But thank God we have a great group of guys that are maintenance this every single day. So we don't have any breakdown. At least none that we'll admit.
Okay, we probably have time for one more question.
Yes, I love your aquarium. One thing that I would like to see, you know, if you want suggestions, is I love the deep sea creatures. You know, the anglerfish and all that. Is there any thought about bringing them on board?
We have one gentleman that would love to have more of the biolumination type animals in there. I'll put it like this. We challenge our husbandry staff every day to bring me something that nobody else has. And that becomes the challenge. And we're working on a lot of animals right now. Part of it fits into some of the planning that Heather's working on. But we're never stopping, so I'll never say no to anything.
Okay, I know we're out of time, but there's one more eager question here.
I was wondering about the educational aspect of it. You indicated that you had the students come in and the Georgia criteria that you met and all of that. Is that done through the Atlanta school system? Is that done through like a camp? And is there any type of adult education available there at the aquarium?
We're not doing it through any school system or any school district. This is all done by our staff conforming to the Georgia educational standards and working with teacher groups. We used to have some educational focus groups that we worked on. So we're dealing with it in that basis. Again, we're not tied to any individual government agency. And the Biologists on Tap series, the lecture series, is all more of the adult educational side of this. So there's plenty of opportunities, whether or not you're young, small, or older. Seasoned, that's it. To find something that's going to intrigue you there.
Okay. Thank you, David. Thank you, Heather. Let's give them a round of applause. Great job. Thank you. Thank you.